Right now could be your 2020, where if you look back in 5 years, you go, I wish I purchased then. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down the top 5 things that you need to know before buying or selling here in this market. But first, I am a realtor here in Orange County, so if you are looking to buy or sell, make sure you reach out to me. All my information will be in the description below, but I will also put my number right here. That way you can easily give me a quick text or a call. But now we'll get back into the video. Number one thing to understand is mortgage rates are likely to stay steady for the next couple weeks and maybe even couple months. Reason being is we just got all of the jobs reports from when the government was shut down. And as soon as they put them out, they already said these are likely going to be revised because if we're all being honest, those numbers didn't look accurate. And on top of that, just coming into the holidays and going through into the new year, normally there's not that much movement because there's not that much going on. So rates right now are in the low sixes, between, let's just call it 6.2 and 6.3. It's likely for the next month or so, and maybe even longer, not going to go much above or below that because we don't have any of the key things to change those numbers. Number 2 is supply is actually dwindling. You've probably seen the headlines a couple months ago where it was saying we had the 5-year high in inventory, even though it was still technically very low on average. We were going up, but now the supply is starting to go down, and month over month over month for the past 2 or 3 months, we've actually had a decrease in supply. Now this is very typical for the season of our market coming into the winter. People will delist their home because people aren't looking, but it is definitely a higher percentage than we typically see in this market. Number 3, buyer demand is slowing, but not at the same pace that supply is. So for a good example, supply was down 6% from October to November, but demand actually went up 0.5% per the National Association of Realtors. So with that, what do we see? Technically, they're both kind of going down and lower than we typically see, but the supply is just dropping less. So the demand is more stagnant, and it has been through the year. So typically we see demand shoot up in the beginning of the year, spring market, and then fizzle out to the rest of the year. This year looked a whole lot different. It was actually pretty stale, and then the summer it dipped, which is very not normal. And then it's just been kind of this straight and narrow line for the rest of the year. And the reason why we had that is because rates have been slowly coming down, creating more demand than we normally see. So we have more of that level playing field. However, it is something to understand that we've been seeing pretty much every single week mortgage applications going up, but demand has stayed the same. So all these people are getting prepped to buy, but the sales have been the exact same. So at some point, there's going to be an inflection where everyone who's prepared is actually going to go to purchase. And what most economists are expecting is once we see rates below 6%, that's the magic number that all those people are waiting for. So I would definitely look out for when mortgage rates get to that low 6, even high 5 range. That's when we'll likely see a whole lot of people coming into the market. And number 4 is what's expected by Zillow. Now, Zillow, of course, is one of the biggest real estate monopolies there ever was. And they just released their idea for what's going to happen next year, and roughly 1.6% increase in prices. Now, this is, I agree with this, a very good amount. It's definitely one of the more modest out of all of the different people, you know, of NAR, Redfin, NBC, all of the names that you would know. They're typically going to be around 2 to 4% for next year. There's actually nobody who's saying prices are going to go down, which is pretty interesting to think about if you take all of the top economists. However, I really don't think that rates are going to be going into like mid 5s or anything of that nature. We might see high 5s, but Zillow's guess is roughly 1.6 increase in price next year. And 5th is my idea of what's going to happen. If we do get below 6%, I think that the demand will come in and we will see prices going up. Do I think it's going to be anything substantial? Not really. I really do fall between that 1 to 2% next year, just because it is still so out of reach for so many people. However, there is no reality that I see unless it's something completely, you know, out of our control, like go to war or things of that nature. But because we have such low supply and the demand is kind of stagnant, we're already at the floor of sales. We had the lowest sales ever last year. So prices, even though we had very low sales, which normally means, you know, we're in a bad market, prices in most cases remain the same or went up slightly. So with that, we don't have all 3 factors to cause a crash. One of them being a very high supply. Before the 2008 crash in Orange County in specific, there were 17,000 homes on the market. Right now we have around, give or take, 3,500 to 4,500. So nowhere close to that. The demand is some of the lowest it's ever been, and that is crash levels of demand. So that's why people are thinking the crash is coming, because demand is so low, but we need all three factors for a crash to happen. So the supply is not there. The demand is low enough. And then the third thing is foreclosures. Now, if you look at a kind of bar graph of where foreclosures were, pre-2008 and now, it is this high mountain. And then you actually probably saw another headline that said we had the highest foreclosures this year in a couple years. It was up here with thousands, and then now we're up like 1% from the floor that we had during COVID. So there's not even close to enough foreclosures. We don't have kind of the credit issues and the lending issues that we did have previous to 2008. The other thing I want to note on really quickly too is people are saying, well, there's gonna be an economic recession, meaning there's gonna be a housing recession. Out of the past 7 major recessions, only 2 of them prices came down with housing. That was in 2008 and 1992. Now, the reason why prices came down in housing is because those recessions were caused by housing. In 92 was kind of the credit scandal. In 2008 was the bad loans from the lenders. So both the times where prices came down due to recession, the prices went down as well. However, out of those other 5 out of the 7 recessions, so take 2020 for instance, when we had one of the worst economic recessions ever because of COVID, prices skyrocketed right after because it brought down the interest rates, because the Fed, the people who kind of control the borrowing of money, made rates really, really low so people could borrow money and stimulate growth within the diminishing economy. So typically, 5 times out of 7 out of the past major ones, when we see a really bad economy, they're going to make it easier to borrow money, meaning it's going to create more demand into housing because people can have lower rates and borrow at less of a cost. That was a lot. I'm sorry, but that is the top 5 things that you need to know before buying or selling. And that's why I think right now could be one of those markets where we look back and go, if I bought in 2025 or early 2026, it would have been really good. Of course, that's always there. The best time to buy was always 10 years ago. But I really do believe with right now where we're at, it could be a very good inflection point of rates do start going below that 6%. And I really just don't see prices coming down anytime soon. So if you can comfortably, of course, if you can't afford a home, don't buy a home, and don't just like spread yourself too thin to do so. But if you can comfortably afford a home, I think it's a great time to buy. In that same vein, oppositely, if you were wanting to sell and you don't need to, there's no circumstance that you need to change, I think holding on is probably going to be a good idea, just because we have a lot of things going towards prices coming up sometime soon. So as always, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you subscribe, because I release videos, that is my timer, just like this one every single Friday. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on that. But as always, thank you so much for tuning in to this one. I can't wait to see you in the next one. We'll talk soon.